Hi, I'm Lynn Radice, and this is Tom Leyden, and he is a wonderful sports newscaster. And since they won the Super Bowl, I thought that I would engage him for our new job show. So I wanted to find out a little bit more about what he does and how he tripped into his career. So,
well,
can you tell me?
First of all, I didn't win the Super Bowl. I wish I did, because then I'd have a big fat ring that I could show off. And that's one of those things that's very. But you do feel like you're a part of the journey. So the city won the Super Bowl, and you're a part of the city, and that's fun. So I appreciate you chatting with me. This is cool. Anything I can do to help in this regard? I've noticed, as you have in your field, I'm sure, that there's always people who are just interested in finding out, how did it happen? How did you get the job? What path did you take? And I can't wait to talk about all that. And
that's exactly why I'm here. I think that your career, yes, is a sexy career, right? A lot of people want to do it, either sports journalism or even in broadcasting, whether that would be TV, media, etc. And I did want to find out a little bit about how you actually, tripped onto the career.
Well, like everybody, I had my own path. I think that's the number one thing that I always tell anybody who's interested in doing this, is that every single person who is in the media carves out their own path. There's no one path that you have to follow where it's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I think it really comes down to the personality, and it comes down to the personality's drive and what their desire is. And there's so many different lanes you can choose to travel in. So ultimately you have to feel comfortable in a lane and pick a pool that you're going to swim in. And with every pool comes good and bad. There's good things and bad things in any job, but you have to try to balance it all out. So I didn't answer your question. The question is, how did it happen? I'll try to keep it relatively tight. But I didn't start in television. I had internships in college, and I really enjoyed them, and I knew that this was basically what I wanted to do.
What was your major, by the way?
I was a communication major at BC.
Okay.
And I will say this, I don't necessarily believe that what your major is should pigeonhole you into what you're going to do.
Okay.
Because the broader you can keep your options, the better off you're going to be. And as you get to know me, you'll know that I hate not working. So when I got out of school, and I didn't have a job, I went crazy, absolutely crazy that whole summer, and I was trying to get a job in television. And basically, you can go back, which is now, almost a quarter of a century. I was the young, gangly, inexperienced guy that no news director or nobody who was producing any television wanted. And I understood that. I got it. I understood it. But I needed a job.
Perception.
Yeah. So I needed to. Yes. I had a really good opportunity where I worked at the National Football League. Okay. And it was something completely unexpected, and it wasn't in broadcasting, but it was in sports. And I've always been a big sports guy. So I spent 6 years in New York City working in sports marketing before I even made the jump to television.
Wow. So at least you got somewhere within the field, which I think was important. So, and that gave you exposure? How did you trip into the next role?
Great thing, great word, exposure. It gave me entree to a whole network of people who I still stay in touch with, people who, as their careers have grown, we've consistently touched base with each other and seen how we can help each other out. I was at the lowest of the low levels, so I just used that first 6 years of my career to be a sponge, and I just learned as much as I could from the people who had great experience in the sports world. And obviously when you're working at the leagues, and I worked at the NFL for 4 years and I worked at the NHL for 2 years, you're exposed to all kinds of people in marketing and in broadcasting and in publishing, which is what specifically I did at the NFL. So you just pick people's brains, and then they get to like you a little bit and understand what you can do as a professional, and they say, hey, I should hook you up with this person. So the power of networking, I mean, obviously it's key, but it's unique to every single person.
I think it's so neat that that's what you mentioned, is that you had such a broad scope when you started out. And I think people don't understand that is huge. To have such a broad scope, and then everybody goes on to someplace else. So now your network is just 5 times and 100 times. And that's why you never burn a bridge. That's why, to recent grads that go and just quit a job or just don't want to do it or whatever, you never burn a bridge. I mean, we've all had opportunities where you don't like somebody or don't get along, etc. But yeah, that network is important. I've kept every business card I've ever gotten, and I think that's why I'm so connected.
Yeah.
I take pictures of them. I don't lose them. Whatever I can do. And now, obviously, there's lots of apps that you can just scan things in. But it's very, very important to keep those names as you go through. So then you ended up tripping on all of this network of 2 major leagues. That's huge. Yeah. So in case one league doesn't like you, you can get hired by the other. But you have this huge network. And then how did you get where you're going now?
Well, that's where faith in yourself comes in, because at that point, I think I was 27. And I said, all right, you've always wanted to be on TV. If you don't do it now, you're never going to get a chance to do it. You're not going to be able to leave at age 35 and take a job for $23,000, $24,000, $25,000, which is what I was prepared to do at that point.
Wow.
Now, not everybody's prepared to do that.
Right.
But at that point in my life and at that point in my career, I said, let's do it. Because if nothing else, you've built enough of a network that I set a standard. If you're not happy or you're not good enough by the time you're 35, you get an indication that people have told you you're not good enough by the time you're 35, you can go back. In some way, shape, or form, you've experienced the sports marketing world, you like it, and you could conceivably go back to it, but I'm jumping in. So I just quit. I quit cold turkey. It's crazy when you think about it, right? It's crazy when you think about it. And I ended up taking a job which paid me somewhere around $25,000 a year at a great station in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I viewed it as a great opportunity to, in essence, I tell a lot of people who take their first television job this, it's like going to grad school on a scholarship. That's what you're doing.
That's an amazing quote. I might steal that.
Yeah, you're getting tangible
That's
experience
a very good quote, yeah.
with people who are generally in the same boat as you are.
Wow.
And everyone's learning. And oh, by the way, you get a little stipend. So if you can look at it that way, where you're getting on-the-job experience and you're making mistakes every day and trying to learn from them, that's what I did. And I loved it. And I loved being in that local environment. And from there, it just springboarded. I spent 4 years in Allentown, went to Detroit. I spent 11 years in Detroit. And then I was able to move back to Boston, which is where I'd gone to school, which is where my two sisters are. So it's been good. I have no complaints. Every job has ups and downs, but I have no complaints about how it's gone.
And I think not everybody would do Allentown, right? It's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, they just want the big markets, right? I mean, a lot of kids come out of school and they just are so focused on the big markets. So I think that you have to understand, you have to get where you're going. So, and even Detroit is a challenging area, you know, and you know, not everybody wants to go to Detroit, although it's lovely now, we love it. But I think that, you know, you made your choices, so you went where you're supposed to go, and then you got where you're going. I know at one point in my career, I was actually in pharmaceutical sales for a short stint, and took a major pay cut to get into recruiting. I just, you know, I loved recruiting, and you know, so people take pay cuts, they go to different territories. You can't have everything you want, right? And you moved a lot. Some people's families would not move with you so many times, right? I have people who don't move, or their families don't want to move. So then once again, you're limiting your career choices. So I think that's where you've gotten, is by the choices you've made.
Yeah, the sacrifices are real for everybody involved, from parents to sisters to girlfriends to wives. It follows you in this job. Everyone needs to be aware of what you do, and you need to surround yourself with people who are going to be willing to support that journey. Now, working in a smaller market, you learn lessons that you still carry with you to a bigger market. I learned this. You can't go into a market like Allentown and think you're going to big time it. Say like, well, it's really close to Philadelphia, so we're going to do a lot with the Phillies and the Flyers and the Sixers and the Eagles. You're going to touch those teams, you're going to do that, but when you live in the Lehigh Valley specifically, it's the local sports that people are watching you for. So I learned quickly. Someone said, if you embrace the local sports and you love what these people love, they're going to love you. And so I said, boom, I'm in. And so I was all in on covering the high schools, sports you never thought you'd cover. I remember I got interviewed and they said, what do you know about wrestling? I honestly thought they meant, what do you know about WWE wrestling? And I said, well, you know, it's not real, it's staged. They're like, no, like competitive high school wrestling.
Wow.
And it took me by surprise. But by the end of the experience, I had been at a state championship wrestling tournament with 10,000 people going crazy. Like, that is what is important to the people who locally live in Pennsylvania. So that's what I embrace too.
I think that's always true with even with managers. You motivate people by different things, right? So a good manager is going to know this person's motivated by a day home, this person's motivated by money, this person's motivated by staying in the city, you know, whatever it is. So I think it's interesting that you point that out, that you kind of have to really listen. I think that's important in careers and career transitioning. But I think the fact that you were able to leap, and the ability to leap over many different things, I think is incredible. I think not everybody's willing to do that or willing to take those chances. So as you said, quitting, starting out in a local market, starting out something totally unrelated to communications, you know, these are all things that I think have empowered you to be who you are.
Yeah, you have to be true to yourself. You have to stay true to your own dream and have faith in yourself and your own ability. And I would watch every single thing I did on television. And I got that, believe it or not, from Jerry Rice, who's the best receiver in NFL history. He watched every single practice. He watched film of every single rep that he took, every single game. And I remember the moment where I said to myself, well, if he's watching everything he does and he's the best at what he does, I'm going to watch every single thing that I do. And I think when you're in this business, you have to do that, because when you're doing it, you don't realize the mistakes you're making. And you have to look back and say like, ooh, don't make that face, or don't say that word, or you stumble over that. And you learn the lessons and you say, okay, don't do that again. And when I went to Detroit, it was a matter of just really simplifying stuff. And I had a great mentor by the name of Don Shane, who'd been there for a long time. He actually spent some time here in Boston too in the 80s. And I just watched him and I said, wow, you can get a lot done in a little bit of time. And I was taking too much time and I wasn't being as effective. And I was able to just emulate him and watch what he did and just by osmosis, figure it out. If you're not doing that with the people who are older than you are, you have to do it, because the people who are successful, just emulate them and do what they do. There's no shame in stealing things that are successful if it's going to work for your career. That's a good one that we should pass on to people too, because you have to look at those that have been successful and say, well, if that's the path they chose and those are the things that they've done, then maybe I should consider doing that.
Yes, I think that's really important, to surround yourself with the best. You know, a lot of people get in with kind of the naysayers, the people that, you know, don't want to go with the flow, they don't like their manager, the complainers, you know, those types of things, and that's going to drown you. So always hang out with, you know, who the best people are, or at least who your boss thinks the best people are. You need to emulate them, right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. We've both learned, you know, some good and bad things, but it's true. I think you have to surround yourself with the best, and I believe that, you know, will get you where you need to be. There's a lot of age discrimination out there in every field, right? So, I mean, it is and it exists. And then these people need to transform their careers, and that's half the reason why I'm doing this job show, is to show people so many different careers and how we can always transition. But how do you feel about age discrimination in your industry? Do you see it?
You know, I have seen it. I would never cite anything specifically. I think that what you saw most notably in the 2000s, before we got to 2010, was a lot of the big stations locally did get rid of big name talent who had been there for a long time. Wow. And it was ugly. And it wasn't one city, it was many cities. And so you see that, and what it makes a younger person think, and at that point I was 10 years younger than I am now, it's like, is this sustainable? Is this a job that I can really have until I'm 55, 65? How long am I gonna work? What am I gonna do to reinvent myself? Am I going to be doing what I'm doing now when I'm 65? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think every day it's like, well, what's next? What's going to be your next opportunity? So in that regard, just like you say, where you keep every business card and you talk to as many different people as you can, it may not be a move to another station. It may be a move to a new career, something completely different that intrigues you, that you're going to say, you know what? I still have 20 more years to work, or I still have 10 more years to work, or 5 more years to work. I need to diversify myself so I can do something different and be good at it.
The Lynn and Tom Jobs show. I mean, that's what we're thinking, you know.
Could be
you
a
just never
possibility.
know. But no, I think that's really important, that you always keep yourself ahead of the curve, keeping in touch with people. And yeah, as we age, I mean, we're all aging. We have to have multiple sources of revenue, multiple streams of contacts, multiple things that you can do. So I think that's really important. But yeah, no, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to do this. This is awesome. And I think there's so many college kids who would want to do what you do. There's people that are in the field that don't know how to get to the next level. And then, you know, there's people that just, you know, want a new career. So I think that, you know, it's nice of you to do this for us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.